So agoraphobia, which, oh, my camera's very close, which I've discussed before in my initial video, is something that can actually develop very quickly. And it's generally a phobia that can develop from on the basis of, for example, just a one-off panic attack that might happen when the person is outside of their home, or they're in a situation, in a scenario, maybe out shopping or driving, or even like a passenger in the car or something, and then suddenly experiencing this intense panic, like sweaty palms, like palpitations, and a real shaking and trembling, and a real sense of almost like you're going to die, or a total feeling of being out of control. And these are like physical feelings, and they are absolutely terrifying for somebody to feel that. So you don't forget that in a hurry. So if you've experienced that, then the prospect of being in that situation again is going to come to mind very, very easily. And so the person may decide, well, I'm not going there again, I'm not going to that shopping mall, or I'm not going driving, or, traveling with somebody, because I'm going to experience that again because of the intensity of it. So it really does leave an imprint and a very strong memory. So it's very, very unpleasant, and that's the reason why it can develop very quickly and suddenly turn into the person starts to catastrophize about going anywhere, and that a panic attack could happen. And because they can be so random, then the person is going to feel, well, the likelihood of it happening is high. So it's all that kind of self-talk as well, to protect yourself from experiencing the intensity of those or physical symptoms again. But those physical symptoms are really coming from, and what's difficult to understand is that people don't generally understand the reason why they've had this panic attack. They try to rationalize it. There's no understanding or explanation behind it. So to try and understand the reason behind the physical symptoms and everything just becomes impossible. So the person can actually start to feel, well, there must be something wrong with me, and this just sort of magnifies the problem and intensifies it. So it very quickly and very easily does develop into a phobia, and like generalized anxiety and a fear of going anywhere, because naturally nobody wants to feel those symptoms. And even if they didn't happen, sort of the possibility that they might happen on that, and it's, the mind wants to avoid pain, and it moves towards pleasure. So the instinct is to avoid any situation where there's going to be pain or discomfort, especially that intense discomfort of those physical symptoms of a panic attack. And what's really helpful is to try to, because the understanding behind a panic attack is so kind of almost not there, and they do start because the rational mind is not there to interrupt and say, hey, look, there's nothing wrong here. It's the emotional brain that's taken over. But the person doesn't really understand where that's come from, so it's buried in the subconscious. And very often we can get to the bottom of that by exploring what's in the subconscious. And, throughout our lives, we do have tons of experience. As a child growing up, you absorb everything through your subconscious until you get to that age of sort of logic and reason, around, 7 or 8. But up until that age, you're absorbing everything almost through hypnosis and through your subconscious. And you're attaching meaning and beliefs to these experiences, and these just go, boom, straight into your subconscious. And, there's a lot of room in there for all these memories. And the likelihood of finding maybe one or two reasons and exploring that, an explanation for this anxiety and where it's come from, is very high. Because, the person at some stage of their life must have felt vulnerable or out of control, or in some sensation, some emotion that's caused them distress, or to cause them to feel out of control, or that something terrible is going to happen, or maybe that sort of learned helplessness, which I've discussed in other videos and I can come on to again. So there's a lot to talk about on this topic, but the subconscious is really key to this. I mean, you can learn sort of talking therapies and talk about things consciously, but if the understanding behind why these attacks happen is not there, if you actually don't know why it's happening, then it's difficult to know what the talking therapy is going to do. It can help with maybe tools and ways to manage the anxiety, but to get to the root cause and to understand the reason behind it and why it happened is very relieving for a person. It's very reassuring, and they can understand, right, well, that's why I feel or I have felt that way. And the person can join the dots, and joining the dots is extremely powerful because it elevates you to a certain level of understanding and realizing that, you know, you're not broken, you're not a failure, you're not sort of somebody that can't be treated, but that there is a reason, and maybe several reasons behind it. So I hope that's been helpful, and have a great evening. More to come on this topic.